Welcome, innovators, business owners, entrepreneurs, technology experts, academia, government R&D communities, and members of the North Carolina innovation ecosystem. This is Defense Technology Talks, hosted by the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or NC DEFTECH. This podcast will showcase various technologies with local and national experts who aim to solve complex national security problems. In the coming weeks, we will highlight North Carolinians with the potential to, or those that have positively contributed to enhancing the capabilities of our warfighters, law enforcement, and first responders. We will also feature government leaders in research and development who have helped shape the future in this domain. These podcasts are just one of the many free services provided by the North Carolina government to assist the North Carolina innovation ecosystem to thrive and provide solutions to our nation. This is Rob Robinson from the Defense Technology Transition Office, or DEFTECH. This episode of Defense Technology Talks has the National Security Innovation Network. I have two folks from there. I have Javier and Toby, but I am not going to steal any of their thunder. I'm going to let them give you a little bit of their background so you can understand who they are and what they do a little bit better, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into this conversation, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Javier first, and then Toby, if you can follow up after him. Tell us about yourselves, and we kind of led in with what organization you represent, but you do have specific roles that you both hold in the organization, so I'd love it if you could elaborate on those. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you having us. Everyone, my name is Javier Gomez. I've supported NSIN for a couple of months now, but I've been helping startups find their way through the many front doors of the Department of Defense over the last 7 years. So I'm excited to be here to tell you a little bit about how we do what we do and how you can engage NSIN and the many DoD organizations out there that need your help. Over to you, Toby.
Yeah, thanks, Javier. And thanks again, Rob, for having us on here. I've been with NSIN for about 18 months now, working on a team called the Transition Cell. Currently, I help companies coming through NSIN programming and companies that kind of find us of their own volition, make sure they understand what they need to kind of have ready when trying to raise venture capital as a dual-use startup. So that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different companies, but we know raising money as any kind of startup is tough. Raising one as a dual-use company is sometimes even more difficult. So we try to make sure that we utilize NSIN's resources and network to help those great companies get the cash that they need to scale as they also continue to try and sell into the Department of Defense. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And you made a great point, both of you guys. And one of the things that people forget to realize is you just don't go into business to sell to the government. And I try and encourage people to get that understanding. And the reason why it is because there's a finite amount of folks in the DoD. DoD on a good day does not come close to the overall population in the United States. So if I have a technology that I can scale, and again, that's business planning 101, is being able to scale into different enterprises that can create more fund streams for you. But much more difficult prospect when I have a small business and I'm just trying to keep the lights on. So I completely understand that aspect of it as well. But you mentioned, getting people in through the doors in the Department of Defense. And NSIN is one of those unique entities that it seems like you guys do a lot more commercial outreach than a lot of the other companies do, or like a lot of other innovation arms, because what I've seen in the military is a lot of it's grassroots. Like, hey, I've got this problem in the organization that I need to solve. So I build out this white paper, or I build out this requirements document, and then I hand it over to some higher headquarters that takes care of it. But NSIN seems like it's a little bit different. It looks like you guys are approaching, business first, and then trying to develop basically a reverse pipeline, not finding solutions that have problems, but technologies that actually will fit within the government apparatus. But in short, what problem do you technically try to solve? Because raising capital is a very, very broad thing. And so there's a lot of nuances that go into that. But could you elaborate on, what particular capital organizations are you looking for, or what kind of structures do you help these businesses approach when they're trying to get funding from the government?
Yeah, I mean, you put it well there. It's a tricky problem to solve. I guess I'll start from the kind of high level and then work my way down into the more detailed stuff. So I do think that in general, there has been a kind of a change in the attitude of the private investment ecosystem towards dual use companies. So 10 years ago, it was really hard to raise venture capital from a Silicon Valley based investor if you were a company that was trying to build technology that the DoD would use. A lot of that was because the acquisition processes were not understood to the point by the investor where they felt that they could take on that kind of risk. But at the same time, there was also just there wasn't a realization that the technology that's going to give and kind of maintain America's place in the world is coming from the commercial sector, and it needs private capital to scale. I think that there's been a real kind of coming around to the realization that unfortunately, the private sector and the federal sector, no one of these sectors can solve this problem themselves. And so from the private investment side, that change has been really kind of important, and we see it kind of gathering steam over these past couple of years. So what we try to do at NSIN is just to make sure that not only do we understand the companies coming through our pipeline, and that also means understanding the problems that our R&D has harvested from our mission partners, but we also understand how to match those up with the investment theses of the VCs that we work with. So a lot of what we do is interaction with venture capitalists and kind of business development in the way to just get to understand them and what they're looking for a little bit better, so that if there is a technology that we think fits that those kind of parameters, we make those introductions and we let them go from there. We do all that we can to make sure that we just understand the technology and the investors to the point where we can make an introduction that actually leads to something. And when we aren't just kind of flapping in the wind and hoping for something to happen. And so that's just a lot of communication and a lot of kind of concerted effort to make sure that we're asking the right questions and being receptive to feedback and stuff like that. A lot of, based on the kind of nature of NSIN as an organization, a lot of those investors are pretty early stage. So we're talking, pre-seed, seed, Series A. So that's obviously, a very early stage in the kind of a company's life cycle. We are seeing some NSIN companies that are looking to raise later rounds, Series B, Series C. But right now it's mostly that really early stuff. We're doing more and more to engage with angel investors because often those individuals who a lot of times have kind of come before and built similar companies in the same space. And so they think they have the know-how not only to spot an advantageous opportunity, but also give kind of specific help and feedback that'll help that investment grow. We're trying our best to interact with them more because, those types of investors often provide the capital that's necessary at those really, really early stages. But yeah, like I said at the start, changing the winds. And I think the DoD in general is realizing and kind of learning how to interact with private investment as an organization, and we're just a small part of that. But yeah, we've had some success, and we're looking to kind of always continually adapt and take feedback to make sure that we're kind of tweaking stuff and turning dials to make sure that we continue to interact with private capital in the best way possible.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. And you said some things that seem pretty daunting, especially for a lot of startups. Finding that pre-seed round or that A round investor, pretty daunting, because I think most people's thought process or how they envision the discussion with the venture capitalist or an investor is very, very much like Shark Tank. I'm going to go in there. There's going to be a panel of these people. They're going to be hardcore. They're going to be cutthroat, and then they're going to ask me for 51% of my company. And not necessarily the case. A couple other points that I'd like to touch on again, and we say this all the time, but until you actually see it play out in real time, you really, don't have as much understanding. So take space operations or use of space vehicles. We used to have NASA that did all that stuff for the government, launched satellites, sent people to space, did all that other thing. And that was a huge, huge market industry in the race to space. And then, there was a point in time where it became more viable for commercial organizations to take over that aspect of, the environment. And so watching what SpaceX and Virgin and all those other, commercial entities that still provide support to the government, but also have commercial applications of that technology is a perfect example of how it's kind of shifted. And we see that all the time. One of the questions I do have to ask is for instance, I'm a software startup. One of the most difficult things about being in software is how do I get authority to operate, and do I bake that into my funding request? If you were talking to a software as a service company, would you encourage them to build in that authority to operate as part of their glide path as to approaching government, or do they need to try and do that on their own? Because there's some costs that are involved with both. But I think the more complete a package that you can give to the investor, I think is better. But what are your thoughts on authority to operate on a government network?
Yeah, I mean, I think the accurate answer to your question, Rob, and this is unfortunate that it is, the accurate answer is it really depends. I mean, I think that one thing that we at NSIN have focused on is making sure that the investors in our network, when they hear ATO, and they're, maybe they're in due diligence with the startup, they get to that question, okay, have you found your way to ATO, or is that still kind of on the roadmap? They're not running for the hills immediately. We all understand it can be an arduous process. It can be an expensive process. But the truth of the matter is that if the product is good enough, and there is some sort of a good level of end user validation and technical talent on the founding team, that ATO can be obtained via a good partnership with an investor. And so from my standpoint, I think it will depend on, what other costs that startup is looking at, what are the other milestones that they are looking to achieve with that round that they're trying to raise, and stuff like that. But I do think it boils down to making sure that you're interacting with the right investor. And I think that back to that kind of changing in the winds, there has been a proliferation of well-capitalized investors who understand what ATO is and what it kind of means for a startup. And it's no longer just this, just believed to be this hellacious process that a startup needs to go through to maybe get a chance at selling to the DoD. It's now, if you're looking at a good investment opportunity, this is a hurdle that you need to get over with your founding team. So I think that it does depend on the situation, but if you're talking to the right investor, they'll understand the process that's laid out in front of you. They'll also understand the value that you'll get by going through that ATO, and gaining that ATO. And while it's expensive, it'll definitely pay off in the long run. So again, I think that there's no right answer there, but I do think it's all about picking the right investors and making sure that they are kind of not only check writers, but also partners in the scaling process. That being said, I don't necessarily advise any startup to raise around and then say, okay, and by the way, we need to go get this ATO. That's probably a conversation that I think you should have up front with any investor that you're interacting with. And it'll also, gauging their reaction will help you suss out if they're the right people to invest with you and kind of help you build the company as you go through what will be a tough process.
Yeah, that's great discussion there. And it's really important because I think a lot of people forget about that. And, negotiating your contract is so important, but making sure that you negotiate all aspects of your contract is important as well, because there are things that, depending on what you're providing to the government, that you would have to hold on to. Don't want to neglect you, Javier. So I do have a couple questions for you. Is there anything that you've seen since you've been on board at NSIN that is just something that is just a critical mistake or a critical piece of technology? I don't want to say technology, but a critical success or failure that you've seen, like something that somebody has done that says, yep, this is it. I can really work with this person, or something that as soon as they walk through the door, you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can work with this person because of X, Y, or Z.
Rob, that sounds like a loaded question. You're trying to get me in trouble. But I like how you gave me a way out with the positive one. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about a little bit of both. The folks that we coming in and name dropping, we interview about 5 startups a week, and we ask them to come in and give us their pitch. So that we can understand what they're doing, what their contribution is, and then we ask them to give us their hardest problems that are standing right in front of them, to see if we can help them overcome. And these are problems related to doing business with the department. And so, we get some startups that come in not very humble at all. They're the best of the best, according to them, and they have all of the 4-star generals, that they're rattling off that they've met, and they've got the leadership of every service and department, agency, asking for their capability, but they just can't seem to break in. And so those are some of the more frustrating calls, because we forget to unpack the initial capability when they just start name dropping and talking about how great the capability is. And they forget to really begin at stage 1, which is, what are you working on? What's the innovation? What's the breakthrough that you have? And let's talk about some use cases. So that's a little bit from an industry perspective. From a government perspective is, I'll just call it technology tourism. We have a lot of folks who are really interested in keeping up with the latest and greatest in what's going on in industry, but they don't have the funding. They're not the requirements owners. They don't have the ability to influence the actual buy process. And so we end up with a lot of showcases, demonstration events that end up going nowhere. And so those are some of my frustrations is helping to get at some of those issues. Now, where we have some success and the things that I've seen, go right, when startups come and brief us, and it's a very, a very good overview of the capability, and we might not have anything for them right then and there, any kinds of recommendations. But what some of the better founders do, I found, is keep us on their mailing list, and we'll send quarterly updates to either investors or kind of stakeholders in their circles, and the updates will be around, hey, we've developed an additional capability, we've raised some more money, we've got these new customers, and by the way, we need some help with hiring. We need some help connecting with this specific Army organization. It's a little bit of a plea for help at the bottom, and so those companies usually get a lot of love from us, because they're fresh in our mind, and they're giving us a lot of relevant information for us to act on. And then on the government side, some of the goodness is we've seen these end users, these different, so not just end users, but different folks around the department who are looking for innovative capabilities outside of their traditional sources. We've had, I'm not going to name names, but we've had organizations come to us and say, hey, I've worked with this organization traditionally, and I want to see what a brand new, tech scout, I want to see what a commercial tech scouting, organization can find me, and compare it to the guys that I've been working with traditionally. and they have found a lot of success doing that. And so we're starting to see a lot of folks step outside their comfort zones, and it's generating good results in terms of finding companies that are commercially viable and have that dual use application. The specific example I'm thinking of was a OCR tool that a government organization was looking for. They found a better one by kind of outsourcing their tech scouting than their traditional source. So, Rob, I'll leave it there and let you kind of follow up or new question.
No, that's great feedback. And again, I've sat in meetings with founders that don't know when to shut up, and I hate to say it that way, but there's people that they enjoy hearing themselves talk, and they want to basically, hey, I know all these generals like you previously mentioned, or they want to talk about all the doctrine that they've read, So I've read all these, 47 different tech manuals, and I understand, I'm the subject matter expert on multi-domain operations, but I've yet to step foot in an environment where multi-domain operations have been done. I've only done it from an academic perspective. And I think there's something to be said, and we were talking about this before we got on the call, is how, genuineness of a leader in an organization or genuineness of a business owner to be successful is just as important as, that person who has that breaking technology. The people are just as important as the technology, and that's kind of a USASOC thing. But we got to understand that being able to balance, what technology I'm bringing to the table and the personalities that are there, because the personalities can kill a deal just as easily as not having a finished or available technology that's ready to go. So I think there's a balancing act that goes in between both of those things. And I really appreciate, your frankness with that. And I understand you can't name companies that you're working with, and that's fine, because I think we all could probably go down a laundry list of folks that have probably not done as well in opportunities because of any number of reasons, but not having a good commercialization plan is probably one of them. Name dropping, like, hey, I have all these people on my board, but what does your technology look like? And we've seen that song and dance play out many, many times. And you're dealing with the government, and sadly, I think the rule of the government that has been in place for a while is trust but verify. And as far as a government entity is concerned, they are even less trusting because budgets are finite. And so if I'm going to NSIN or I'm trying to utilize one of the other agencies that help me do innovation, I really have to make sure that my ducks are in a row. But this has been a great conversation. Very refreshing, gentlemen. I just have one other point to ask you, and that's really simple, is basically where can we find more information about what you guys do in particular at NSIN, and how can we find out more about your mission set, and is there anything that we can do on our end to enhance your mission? But I will pause there and let you give us a quick answer, and then we'll get you out of here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So, the first thing anyone can do is make sure that they're signed up for our newsletter. If you go to our website, ensign.mil, you'll be able to sign up for that. It's a weekly newsletter. It kind of gives you eyes on everything that's going on at Ensign. That can mean, collaboration events. That can mean, upcoming programs that companies should apply for or individuals should apply for. That's going to be definitely your kind of your first stop. Also, if you go to the transition sales page at the Ensign website, you can engage with us, and you can send us a note, and we will send you our engagement form, and we can go from there. One of the things that we've tried to make sure we do at the transition cell is, sometimes the timing isn't right for a company or a program at Ensign. If that's not the case, we are more than happy to talk to them. Like Javier said, we speak to 5 to 7 startups a week, try to do everything that we can to make sure that they're in the best position moving forward, to kind of take advantage of any and all opportunities they might have as a dual use company. So it starts at the website. Make sure you follow our newsletter. And then, that's going to be your first step.
Perfect. Javier, I'm going to give you the last word if you have anything. If not, we'll wrap this
Yeah,
up.
Rob. I want to make sure I answer your second question, and I was so focused on answering the first one, I forgot what the second one was. But contact us, like Toby said on the NSIN website, the contact us page. If you scroll down, we actually have two different kinds of stakeholders at NSIN. One is the mission partners. We can't do our job without our mission partners giving us their hard problems. We take their problems, which they can enter via our web form on the contact us page, and we put them through the Gonculator, and we pick the best fit NSIN program that either is going to solicit students to come work on them, or we're going to ask for companies to come work on those problems. So if you're a mission partner listening to this, please find us on the Contact Us page and submit your problem that way. If you're a startup or an individual and you want to get some general advice on how to do business with the department, maybe you want a little bit of insight into what kind of programs NSIN is getting ready to kick off. Like Toby said, go to our website, contact us. There's a startup engagement form there that you can fill out, and that'll get you right on our calendar. You'll get Toby and I for about 45 minutes, where we'll listen to your capability pitch, and then we'll hopefully have some insight for you in return on government offices you should be talking to, government individuals, government projects you should be tracking. And if we know someone there, we can help make introductions. But it's going to begin with you filling out a form on our NSIN website and submitting a single PowerPoint slide and any other marketing material. But everyone gets a meeting. So looking forward to talking with you all and helping you any way we can.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, because I think that's one of the things that's, again, the fear of the approach is part of the problem. So, I mean, filling out a web form seems fairly easy. So I would encourage everybody to do that. Jump on the NSIN website. We'll drop that into the podcast description so you guys will have it readily available. Go to the transition cell. And one of the things that we always talk about here at DefTech is, make sure that you have your white paper and your elevator pitch. And it sounds like white paper and elevator pitch is a great way to get you there. And the single quad chart. So with your capability statement, what problems that you're trying to solve. And so again, it just reinforces what we have been saying. And it's always nice to get validation from outside organizations. A single PowerPoint slide. We use the quad chart format because that's a format that we use, because it's easy to upload to multiple different platforms. So for example, we always encourage people to use Vulkan or eSoft. And if I have a quad chart that I've been using that have been, has multiple agencies that have kind of cut on it and given me feedback and I make changes, that's the one that I want to use and put my best foot forward every time I'm engaging with the government. But, really appreciate your guys' time today, gentlemen. This was a great call. My eyes are open a little bit more to the aperture of what you guys are doing, and definitely want to continue to promote this both on all of our social media stuff as well as in our Mobilize community. And hopefully our audience will be listening to this and take a chance and fill out the paperwork, and at the very least have a meeting, because that first meeting may generate some leads. And you guys can help with customer discovery. And I think that's one of the difficult parts too, is like, if I'm a small business and I'm just, again, working to keep the lights on, I need to have as many avenues as I can. But if I have a passive avenue that can help me find more information about the government problem that I'm trying to solve, rather than me trying to do all that research myself, sometimes it's okay to reach out to other people to get assistance. But again, this has been Rob Robinson, and for the other two gentlemen on the call from the NSIN Transition Cell, I appreciate you guys checking us out today, and we will talk to you guys next time. Thanks. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Defense Technology Talks, hosted by the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or DEFTECH. The views expressed in this broadcast are solely those of the individual contributors. As indicated, DEFTECH does not take responsibility for those statements or opinions and accepts no responsibility or liability for any inaccuracy or omissions reported during this program. The content and interviews are fair use for instructional purposes and to build awareness for the North Carolina innovation ecosystem. The full version of this presentation has been uploaded to our Mobilize platform. Mobilize is just another free service provided to you to access more national security and business collaboration opportunities. You can sign up for more information at deftech.nc.gov. Join us soon for the next podcast coming to a platform near you. DEFTECH is a subsidiary of the North Carolina Military Business Center and receives its support from Fayetteville Technical Community College.